Well, new format, Lawrence. Our land acknowledgement's coming at the end, but what's not going to change is that we're still going to talk about all the Métis things that we really like to talk about, how we engage our community, how you're always somehow available for a coffee whenever need be. But we got a whole bunch of topics that we're going to jump on. So, folks, for all of you who are listening, and for thank you to all of our subscribers, at the end of our show today, we're going to have a very nice acknowledgement. And that way we get a chance to jump right in a little bit quicker than we often normally do. So, I'm Ross Memphis Pamburn, the captain, and with me, my very good friend, Lawrence, the president, Gervais. Lawrence, here we are again. Now, for the last few weeks, we haven't had this unique opportunity of getting together because somebody we know or somehow in relationships or somebody out there are struggling through following the rules. And we almost have to be careful with using some of these terms, because if you use the term that came up during October and what's happening in our country, you might get flagged. If all of a sudden you start bringing up even the term that starts with the, you might get flagged because they don't know whether you're talking about it positively, negatively, but the aunties out there get affected. Now, I'm not talking the Métis aunties, I'm talking the other aunties. But yes, we have to be careful. But today we've got a whole bunch of things that we're going to jump into. And let's get started on one of them, Lawrence.
Well, I mean, first I want to comment on, why we missed 2 weeks. And I just want to let everybody know that I did cough in the last in-person episode at the beginning. Had nothing to do with COVID. My kids got sick, and I just wanted to make sure we were okay. But it was just a cold. It wasn't COVID. Nothing like that.
Should I move another foot over?
No, you're fine. You're okay.
Yeah, because you somehow, even during that period of time, the beard's gotten longer and grayer.
Well, I just stayed away from them. I shut the door and I'm like, just locked it.
If any of you work for the children's services, that was likely not necessarily a true statement.
I let my wife go in there and deal with them, right?
That's right. One of the things before we jump into a lot of our Métis things, and I know we brought this, you and I had this conversation probably a few weeks ago, but we keep forgetting to talk about it. For all the people out there, I want to see how many of you, and you're more than welcome to email us, tsw@squeakywheel.ca, time cards. We should have time cards here in the office for us. When we show up, instead of just showing up with Tim Hortons, you get to show up also with the folks. How many of you out there remember, Lawrence? I remember it from when I used to work for Safeway, showing up there and you grab that time card and click.
Right. Click. And then you're watching the time and you're waiting to go back just to hear that click again, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like we're trained monkeys. But.
And somebody at the end of that used to take those time cards and put it in, and they would go through every minute that you had or hadn't been at work and checked everything. Wow. Yeah. Nowadays, I don't know. Do they still use any kind of time cards? I have seen places that still use time cards, but almost seems like we've moved probably more into a digital age. You flash your little badge.
That's right.
But I don't imagine that many kids out there. All of the kids who are listening from grade 1 to grade 13, still have those?
Yeah.
To grade 12, yes. Ask your parents about what time cards were.
Well, I mean, I worked at A&W with a lot of my cousins, my aunties, and I'm pretty sure I used some of their time cards accidentally.
That was earlier today.
Yeah, that's right.
That you were working, yeah.
I just clocked them out, right?
You had to clock out in order to come to our session today. Yeah. Now, to get into some of the things that are some of the heavy hitter ones, actually, before we get into the conversation, and I think this is very important, we're going to talk burial sites and a bit of reconciliation, but actually only an hour ago, I think it was identified, or at least CBC had brought it up, the Pope is coming to Canada for an apostolic journey to Canada. And actually, one of the things that he's coming to talk about is how was it represented? His willingness to come, but also in the context of the long-standing pastoral process of reconciliation with Indigenous peoples.
Interesting. Yeah.
Isn't it? Because, so many people have been asking for so long, how is the Catholic Church going to either acknowledge, or when will the Pope make any recognition? When will conversation occur? I think this is a very necessary step for the long-standing population here who, especially our elders who have brought up a lot of conversation over the last many, many months. It took, in the aspect of reconciliation, sadly, our acknowledgement and awareness of residential schools to really bring to the forefront the necessity for these conversations.
Yeah, exactly. And, if he's willing to come here, From what I know, through our Métis National Council, there is a delegation that's going to meet.
Mm.
And I think there are 8 of them that are going to go see him from the Métis Nation on behalf of us, as well as First Nations will be there too with their representatives. But, what we really want is some substance. So, a full, certainly, apology, as well as opening up their records for people to find out if they do have ancestors that were buried in those areas.
Well, and I think that is, at the forefront. I don't understand the control of records. Now, I understand records are misplaced. I understand records are hard to manage, right? Because look back 100 years ago, who held the records, right? It wasn't necessarily the government. It would often be the churches.
That's right.
So, those records, you're claiming that you've been managing data for the last 1,000 years. Well, you should probably be able to find some of this information.
Yeah, and is my recollection from the TRC hearings was, soon after, government of Canada took a stance to not share the records, and the church were kind of pressuring to do that too. But now they're finding the truth a little bit more, and certainly I think the government is probably opening up to those ideas as well as the churches. So hopefully it becomes full circle that people can find out. I have an ancestor that is in our family that's buried here.
Because you think of the numbers that were back then of our population, you change 2% of the people and their family and loss at that time. That has a long ripple effect.
Absolutely, and that's why I don't see this really coming to any fruition for a long period. Probably will be gone, and there might be still dealing with it.
Well, by then we'll probably have been kicked off the air or blocked for.
Well, you'll be at Mars or something.
Exactly.
I'll still be here on Earth.
Yeah. Yes, I did start school today, so I'm actually pretty excited about that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about burial sites then specifically.
Well, I mean, I think for us, we have specific sites in mind, or we might have an idea where there possibly are burials. Not school related, but definitely something we've always talked about, certain historical sites. And sometimes farmland that are sort of around those cemeteries might take some of those sort of, we can call them burials, but we're not sure exactly if we do it. But we know we're working with Dr. Keisha Superno on some ideas on how we're going to work with that. And she currently is doing a lot of the burial sites for residential school currently, right? So she doesn't have a lot of time, but she definitely sees this as something that's important for the Métis.
Well, you think of how many sites there are and how many people have been affected. It can't be a very fast process.
No.
There's one thing about identifying this is an area we need to look at. Now, you think of the archaeological approach to how we have to, begin these processes. It has to go slow.
Well, once they uncover, what happens then? Is it DNA? Is it, how we had, the only real substantial knowledge that we could have are those records that are currently being held, right? But that's basically it.
Yeah, those records would definitely help.
Yeah.
And you wanted to talk a little bit about reconciliation. Is that in reference to that aspect or?
Well, I think there's starting to be a big surgence of institutions wanting to do reconciliation, whether they have their different ways of doing it. Some of them certainly are looking at flag raisings to little monuments or statues or looking at something. But, for me, the real truth and reconciliation would be to educate people. And we can only do that in the classroom. And with this current government in Alberta, it's really hard for us to get really solid Indigenous curriculum to teach the teachers to teach the students. So some of those teachers are starting to do it on their own, which, we find as an Indigenous community, well, are they going to teach it the right way?
Yeah.
Is there some sort of knowledge behind it or some life experience? So they really need to come still to our community and we can help them along the way. But
maybe that's something we should be looking at too, is creating our own, the purpose of the Squeaky Wheel is to engage conversation. Maybe we should be trying to figure out how to extend the suggestion to within our own community, creating not a conference, but a education day and seeing how many people could jump on. Maybe something we should be talking to the province
Well, I
about
think,
too.
if you look at our earlier episodes, we did talk about muskrat tails.
Right.
Right. Being little short vignettes on history and Métis culture that we could probably place in schools if the teachers want it.
Yes. So you're a teacher out there, or if you're not, you know one or want to know one or talk to one, reach out to us and we'd be happy to share more of that conversation and hear, from their opinion as well of what's the best way in order to try and get that. Because it doesn't sometimes seem as though, yes, our government is asking for the recommendations on how to share that information. And that seems to be the shame.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like we do have that video that on TikTok of that woman, and a teacher in the States who is mimicking a, powwow dance or something. But yeah, it's something that we don't want to see out there. And I'm sure she doesn't want to see it either.
Don't talk about us without us, folks.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because we can help you. We know the government may not support it now, but the Indigenous community will.
Thinking of down south, and I know we've got another topic that we'll have to jump onto afterwards, but Morgan Freeman, do you hear anything? So he lives in has a property down in a small community down in Gulfport and Alabama. And he has friends who live down there who sit on the board that if they're bringing on new police officers or during the interview process, they have a panel. Well, he put his name forward. And I guess unbeknownst to many of the people who come in to be interviewed, there's this gentleman sitting there, but he's got a ball cap on. He's got sort of an older man's jacket, I think probably would be the term for it, sort of that light sort of jacket.
Right.
And as everybody's asking questions, all of a sudden, it seems like it'd be fun to see how their reactions are. But the individual, the candidate, Morgan Freeman will ask a question and they know that voice, right? It's very distinctive. Yeah. How fun would that be? But he's doing his civic duty.
Wouldn't that be awesome if your name was actually Andy and he was talking to you like you're on Shawshank Redemption? But...
And that's what he's bringing up. Yeah. So I don't know, that would be a pretty neat experience, but kudos to him for, staying a part of that community and being involved.
I'm sure, some of these celebrities out there actually do that. They do some volunteering every once in a while, and he probably noticed it and said, yeah, I got some time.
Yeah. Or it would be an important part of the process.
Yes, for sure.
If you're hiring, within that, for hiring within your community.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the other things you wanted to make mention of too is new ministers. Let's get through some of the government stuff so we can get on to some more fun stuff.
Yeah. So, Minister Bennett, Carolyn Bennett is now, she's with the Ministry of, I forget now.
Oh boy, here we go.
I know. But Mark Miller is now, who's one of Trudeau's friends, that we all know of. And now he's our Minister of Indigenous Affairs, right? So, Crown and Indigenous Relations.
Right.
And, so, we'll see how that goes. He was a parliamentary secretary for Carolyn Bennett. He knows our community already, and he was there for, the Accord talks and all that stuff. So,
well, I think this happens no matter what. Anytime there's a cabinet shuffle, the first comment that comes into all of our media here out west is, this isn't going to be good for our province. Well, shuffling a few names around, what I don't understand is, you had no real experience in this cabinet role before. You have no real history in it. Now, all of a sudden, you have to become the expert. I get it.
Yeah.
There should be people who are, within your group, within your team, within your policy team that hopefully understands and can give you some guidance. But if you want to consider the whole guidance thing, and this is a bit of a segue into the tragedy that happened down in the U.S. there with Alec Baldwin. Right. And the tragic loss, guidance and awareness is one thing, but then there's also personal responsibility. And, it's a sad, very, very tragic tale for the loss of that filmmaker and her role and her family. But I guess the question is if there is a weapon, regardless of if it's real, not real, supposed to be real, could be perceived as real, whose responsibility is it to check that, to ensure?
Yeah, exactly. And that's, from what I understand, firearm safety is huge already. And they've already had processes in place and for some reason people were moving around it, and that's the problem right there. So I mean, somebody's gonna have to accept the liability of it. We're not sure where it'll land. Alec Baldwin didn't really know, and I'm pretty sure he didn't. That thing, he probably thought things were getting taken care of too.
Yeah.
Right. So, it's gonna fall on some of those guys who are in charge of that weapon.
With his tenure and of being in film and television. Now here's a guy who's throws out a lot of responsibilities, during all of his SNL and all his commentary seems to be very much you're responsible. Well, yeah, I'm unsure as to how all this will.
Well, I'm sure back in the 70s and 80s when they were making films and actors wouldn't even show up for weeks because they're busy partying or whatever. But now it's different, right?
Yeah.
Now the film studios hold the power. They hold all the logistics and the policies and everything like that. And they really should have those things taken care of.
True. Sadly, very sadly, this is, consequence is when change occurs.
Yeah.
Situation like this happens. And I would imagine every other film set and every other agency out there that works in any aspect is looking at this going, we have to really look at our processes.
Yeah.
And much like the conversation I often have in any approach is, we have to look at where mistakes are made. Again, how do we work to understand them? And how do we have conversation that is respectful, is polite, so that we can all learn from it? Because just because we look at this and think to ourselves, oh, well, here's what I see, and this would make sense. We do have to hear the other voices out there. And we need to hear in the case, and I don't want it to be tried by the media. It's a question of what is how is the process is going to move forward in a way that we've learned, so that even that family that's been affected and all of the families that have been affected can say, we need to work forward to not make this mistake again.
Yeah, I mean, I think, lawyers and all that stuff, when I watch a movie and I watch those credits roll, there's hundreds of people.
Ooh, yes.
And each one of them have a responsibility, right? And they overlook that, whoever was in charge.
Yeah.
Matter. And I don't think, there has to be a full-scale change or anything like that. No. It's just these people have to be accountable, because that's the only way to fix it.
Yeah, part of the processes. Now, let's move on to something as fun as sports. The Oilers are 5-0.
Right.
Flames are doing quite well. I know we're going to get to baseball because
Montreal.
That's coming up.
I think they won one game, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, boy, the East right now, like Toronto, they're already using the terms, don't panic, right? This is very early in the season, but boy, you start putting together a number of losses, and I think Toronto's got 4 in a row.
Well, they say nothing really happens until after the All-Star break. You could be the lowest team in the league and still go to the top.
Sure.
Right? But
and I 100% subscribe to that, because what I found traditionally happens out west even too is the league starts up, these teams they're energized, and somehow we pull out a number of wins.
Right.
And then the scouting works, the establishment seems to figure out, for example, if you just put 3 players on McDavid, there's not enough of the rest of the team out there to win games. Sadly, that sometimes seems to be true.
Yeah.
So maybe the scouting happens, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with where we are right now.
Right. Except for Montreal.
I'm happy with where we are right now.
I mean, they're worse than an expansion team right now. So
yeah. And, I'd have to look up and see what Ottawa's been doing. And, it's easy to follow your own team.
Well, they spent a lot of their money on Brady Tkachuk this year, so hopefully they do well, yeah.
And they wanted to try and move their stadium a little bit closer into town, because I've been to that stadium. Oh, it feels like it's a long way out.
Right.
And it's small, so to try and get people into that.
It's like when you fly to Edmonton and you're not in Edmonton when you land.
How is our national energy program not affected something about us having to provide new hockey arenas for the East? Like that surprises me that Ottawa wouldn't have a larger rink or have it right beside. Why haven't they moved it right beside the main block yet? Why is it so far out?
I don't know. I mean, maybe it's too close to Montreal's. Maybe it's too close to
Maybe-
Toronto's. I don't know.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Now let's talk a little bit about the World Series because it's just started. In fact, game one happened last night, and my team, the Atlanta Braves, and I'm not saying they're my team because that's who I've cheered for all year long. You have to root for one of them, but I don't know if I can root for the Astros.
No, not since the garbage can.
Not
thing.
since the garbage can.
Yeah.
Folks, when you hit that garbage can at home, you're letting somebody know something about you or your community. And when the Astros were cheating and they were hitting that garbage can to say, swing at this pitch.
Or Altuve had something in his
Yeah,
jersey.
he
Didn't
was
want his
essentially
shirt to come
wearing a
off.
wire.
Yeah.
Don't take my shirt off. And, I got to give it to them. They've done their work to get back to the World Series, but I'm still not there to cheer for them.
No. And, Springer went to Toronto,
Yeah.
was from that team, and he grew on me. But I don't know these other players, Korea and all that.
No, but that Korea is a monster hitter. Like he's
tall and big.
But they've talked about, I think he has the highest hitting percentage for maybe it's postseason. I can't remember exactly what it was, but yeah, fantastic player. Good baseball.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Good day of watching baseball is a better day than being stuck in traffic. Now, I'm sure there's something in between there, and there's probably better analogies than that one, but it is still fun to watch.
Well, it's hard for me to watch a nice ball game because the kids put something in our toilet, and it's been a work in progress for the last month.
To try and get the plumbers to sort it out.
Now sewage is starting to creep up, every once in a while, and it stinks downstairs, and I can't watch TV.
Boy, there is one of the exciting things that happens when you have kids, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
That at some point somebody's going to have to figure out how to solve a plumbing problem because it's a fascinating thing. Yeah. Having a place where if you just put something in there, eventually it'll just go away. Unbeknownst to you, it also lodges someplace. It's the atherosclerosis of our homes. Now, one of the things that I wanted to maybe potentiate as a regular feature, Lawrence, because in my world of satellites, and I want to jump on. So when it comes to data and when it comes to management, I'm very fortunate that right now I'm in a pretty exciting position where I'm studying at MIT, artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, that you really get, one of that constant awarenesses out there that seems to be brought up to me or that I become familiar with all the time is the effect of security, the effect of how we as a population, whether it's the youth or seniors, our phones ring all the time now with scams. And as a sort of regular feature, and for our elderly, because I come across this, and I've had a lot of staff members who've come to me sometimes with problems, but there's always a new scam out there. But one of the things that I really want to hit on, folks, is that when your phone rings, they will try everything in their power, these scammers, to get you to either give up information or go to a site. So the one I want to talk about today is the fact that when they call you, one of the new ones out there is they will say they're from your credit card company. They might not even say the name, but you immediately familiarize. Oh yeah. Yeah, we know you've made 2 purchases. Oh yeah. People have. They might even know the purchases you made because they have the information that as it gets routed, where you may have bought something. So they might say, hey, I know you bought something online at Amazon for the exact amount, $40, 25 cents. Oh, and you also bought something here. And you immediately have this trust. Well, yeah, they already know this. Now they ask you, can you confirm your name? Well, how is it that you don't already have my name? And when you give them any more information, they may want you to confirm that you're holding that credit card, so it wasn't stolen. Now, when you give them those 3 or 4 digits on the back of that credit card, you've given them access to the information. They might even want to ask you about, hey, just verify the rest of the credit card. We already know it, and they've probably given you some of the numbers. Folks, here's my recommendation. Instead of getting belligerent or rude, say, thank you. I'm going to hang up now, and I'm going to call the number on the back and ask for security to verify all your information. Because when you likely hang up or they hang up on you because now they feel like they've been caught, and you call that number on the back, you have called the number that has been provided by your credit card agency. You are the one in control of the conversation. You know the phone number you're calling. You have to give them the validation and verification information. And then you can say to them, has there been any security breaches? And when they say no, you've done your part. You didn't give those scammers the information. So next week I'll have another one. But Lawrence, your phone must ring like mine all the time.
No, I can't qualify for a credit card.
Okay, well,
no, just kidding.
But at least you have a phone. We know that because yeah.
No, just kidding. I got a few of them. But no, I mean, yeah, I'm never too worried. If people want my information, I usually hang up on them.
Yes.
Or I start asking for theirs as a rebuttal. Can you give me your credit card number? Then I'll give you mine.
Which ends up just taking up a lot of time. But yes, I think it's important that we continue to spread this message of, I like the idea of having that as just a bit of a regular feature.
Yeah, like what's your address, right?
Yeah.
Just keep going, right?
And maybe that should be the second part of our regular features. How do you keep them on the phone longer? But sadly, their job as hackers is somebody's paying them to try and get information.
Yeah, and there's some apartment. They're not even in an office. They're just calling people and yeah.
But no, so those are one of the things that I just wanted to hit on. Lawrence, what are some of the other things that are happening right now within our community? We're still trying to work towards getting our elders back out. We're still trying to work at getting everybody back into the community.
Yeah. Well, if this airs before Friday, we have a Red Deer Constitution meeting happening there.
Right. The Constitution meetings are actually really very important and valuable. That's right now.
And then there's one here in Calgary again this Saturday. Yeah. So if people want to get out, voice their concerns, take a look at, go to Alberta, www.albertamétisgov.com and look at the Constitution draft, read it, come to the meeting and make your recommendations there at the microphone because the commission will be there.
And folks, as I've always said before, email us. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to email us. However you want to end up reaching out to Lawrence, there's so many ways that you can find him. But when you have these questions or here is that opportunity where it's not just Lawrence's voice, here is where it's the whole agency, Métis Nation, who is putting these constitutional meetings out. But when you have those questions, you have to do your part.
Yeah, don't listen to somebody else telling their recommendations. To actually tell that person to go to the meeting.
Yeah.
Just go. If you have issues, go there. Stop telling me what is happening. Just go. Right. And I think that's probably the best way we can do this. Stop some of these individuals that just give misinformation continuously. Well, you can't give misinformation, number one, if you don't read the document properly. Mm-hmm. And if you don't voice your concern at these hearings. That's the most
I know as we're trying to move forward where we'd like to bring in a few more guests. Obviously it's been challenging as a result of the fact that we haven't always been able to sit together, but we're in some good positions because we have MPs who are asking if they can come on our show and have conversation. Yeah. We've had other elected officials. I know folks, we're going to continue to work at this, that we're going to try and bring more people into our conversation. Yeah. But right now I appreciate the fact, Lawrence, that you and I each time are hitting on new important aspects of our Métis culture, how our relationship is with all of the rest of the Indigenous cultures, our First Nation friends, and the fact that at least you and I are doing our part to share what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, the invite is open to these individuals. We wanted to wait till after the election. We were being bombarded with people prior to it, and we just kind of thought, well, we're not biased program, so let's wait till after when they're in their
Absolutely.
office.
We have to be very cautious because as you have one person on, immediately they're going to say, well, why didn't you have this person?
That's right.
Yeah. And we're going to run into that. So Lawrence, give us some closing remarks. Folks, at the end of this, because we're trying a different format, we wanted to get to our conversation a little bit quicker. Our initial page that shows who we are and the fact that our land acknowledgement and our respectful acknowledgement to all of our friends at the end. If you like that, send us some information. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook. Share this with everybody you can. If you don't like it, send us an email.
His fault.
Tell us all the same information that you didn't like it. Subscribe to us on YouTube to complain. Subscribe to us on Facebook to complain. But at least you're bringing your conversation forward. So from me here, Ross Memphis Pamron, the captain, Lawrence, close us out.
Well, I want to thank everybody for viewing again. We're going to try to get this stuff on iTunes and Spotify and all those other things, maybe bump up our numbers a little bit. But, production is great, Hopefully we're more entertaining. If we can bring in guests, clowns and all that stuff, and magic people.
So politicians, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
When you say clowns, that's we should make sure that first MP who's asking to come on, that he could juggle.
Actually, I don't know if there's ever been a clown that's been a politician. Like, everyone has a background.
Everybody
right?
has a background, but
if you know a name of a politician who's been a clown,
who's also been a clown, make sure you send it out to us. So from all of us here at the Squeaky Wheel, thank you. Please listen to our acknowledgement, because it took a bit to write, and I enjoyed it. The Squeaky Wheel is brought to you by the Squeaky Wheel Company, co-hosted by the President, Lawrence Gervais, from M&A Region 3, and the Captain, Ross Memphis Pamper. Our program is broadcast from Calgary, in Region 3 of the Métis Nation of Alberta, which is part of the historic Métis Nation homeland. We also acknowledge these lands are the traditional territories of Treaty 7, Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, Tsuut'ina, and Stoney Nakoda, with whom we share this land on the basis of our historical and ongoing relationships. You can always reach us for comment about our programming by email at tsw@thesqueakywheel.ca, or find us on our website, www.squeakywheel.ca, and our socials. For our comments, it is our focus to recognize all of our First Nations and Indigenous friends, share connection with Métis settlements, and listen to and show respect to our Métis brothers and sisters and families. Here at the Squeaky Wheel, we give thanks to our elders for their guidance and to Mother Earth for her time she allows us to be here and share her bounty. From all of us at the Squeaky Wheel, Tanse.